Hey, Thrive Out listeners, Lou Diamond here. You know, we truly appreciate how many of you have been going out there and listening and hearing the great guests that we've had on this particular podcast. Well, now we want to hear from you. Head on over to twitter.com and follow Thrive Loud. There'll be a pinned post right on that page. And from there, we'll be asking you what you would like to see added or incorporated into the Thrive Loud podcast. It could be a special feature, certain types of questions. Maybe it's even music or opening intros that we do at the top of the show that are quite entertaining. Heck, it could even be things that you don't want to see or listen to in the podcast anymore. So head on over to twitter.com, connect directly to Thrive Loud, respond to the pinned post, and incorporate your feedback, and we'll incorporate it into the show. Thanks for listening and enjoy this great episode.
Excuse me, can I borrow your towel? My car just hit a water buffalo.
Get ready to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have the CEO of Business Made Simple, an online platform that teaches business professionals everything they need to know to grow a business. He's the host of the Business Made Simple podcast. He's the author of several books, including the #1 Wall Street Journal bestseller, Building a StoryBrand. Thrive Loud listeners coming from Nashville, Tennessee, Donald Miller. Donald, how are you today?
I'm great. Glad to be on.
I love guys that make things easy. And it seems like this is what you've done. Can we do the little rewind and then hit the fast forward button for our listeners? I want to understand how this became your gig and how you figured out how to make things so simple.
Well, it's all accidental. I started as a writer and wrote a bunch of memoirs. And of course, in order to do that, you got to figure out how to keep an audience interested, turning the pages. And then was asked by a big consulting firm to develop a project management system based on narrative, based on story structure, which I'd studied to write books. And did that and discovered that, a story structure view into project management and clarifying your message, all this sounds really complicated. But basically, I just took these ancient 2,500-year-old formulas that storytellers have been used to keep an audience interested, translated that into clarifying your message so that customers get interested in your brand, wrote a book about that, and it sold 500,000 copies. And suddenly I was sitting on a completely different company. And in order to grow that company, I had to learn about reading profit and loss statements. I had to learn about business strategy. I had to learn about management and execution. I had to learn about negotiation. I had to learn about marketing. I had to learn all these things. And, we grew a pretty big company in only about 5 years. So I would just turn around and teach people, okay, here's how I did that. Here's how I did that. And what I found was that none of these people had learned how to grow a business in college. They'd studied white papers on trade with China. They'd studied mergers and acquisitions. They studied Volkswagen ads from 1973. They didn't know the basics about growing a business. And so I just put together the book Business Made Simple to teach everything I'd learned in the last 5 years. And again, was shocked to find out that people really, really needed it. That most of us who are growing a business feel like we're having to make it up every day, and we don't have a lot of confidence that we know what we're doing. And so I really hope this book is a help.
Donald, why do we make things so complicated? I
honestly think there's two reasons. One is to make ourselves feel smart. And I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean, I've met a lot of people who sound really smart when it comes to business. I mean, they've got the complicated vocabulary and the stories, but you put them in charge of a business and they'll sink that business. They just don't have the basic street skills it takes to smell what you should be doing in order to make a profit. And so I think that's part of it, is we get suckered into sounding smart when growing a business really is not that complicated. And I think that's one of the reasons. I think the other thing is that, it's really hard to make things simple. It's not easy to explain things in a simple way. You really do have to master it in order to know what the basic fundamentals are. And a lot of us just haven't gotten that deep yet. But, the bigger problem is, college teaches you to sound smart when it comes to business. I don't know that it teaches you to actually be smart. And there's a lot of businesses out there that look successful, but they aren't successful. they have a big shiny new building and lots of fancy team members and, great branding, and they're losing money. And the reason they're losing money and able to stay afloat is because venture capital and private equity is funding them. But fundamentally, they are a bad business. And so, we grew our business in 5 years to about $16.5 million, 64% profit margin, no investors, no private equity, no partners, and no loans from banks. We just did it because we made products that would solve a customer's problem, and they were willing to pay us in order to solve that problem. And, when I turned around and started comparing the numbers, I just thought, gosh, this is a giant con game. If you really want to run and grow a successful business, there's just some basic rules that you've got to obey.
Can we share a little bit with the listeners, Donald, just some of those basic rules? Because I think they would love to hear a few that is something that they can look at the way that they do things to make things a little easier for the entrepreneurs in the audience.
Yeah, I think if you want to grow a business, there are 6 major categories. There are 6 things you've got to figure out. And then after you figure them out, you've got to maintain them. And the way I teach this is a business works like an airplane. And in order to stay afloat, in order to keep flying, an airplane needs 6 things working together really well. You've got a cockpit. You got leadership who understands where the plane is going and has prepared the plane to get there. You got a right engine, which is your marketing, your left engine, which is your sales, your wings, which are your products, your body, which is the overhead, and your fuel tank, which is the cash flow. So if you manage well your leadership, and leadership is really just about the direction that the company's going. That's all it is. The right engine is your marketing, and hopefully that's a sales funnel and a clear message. Your left engine is your sales. Now, you don't have to have a sales team. You can survive just on marketing. But if your sales are there, they're going to increase the thrust of your engine. The biggest thing you got to manage is the body of the airplane, and that's your overhead. And you, of course, want to keep overhead really low. And then you've always got to watch your cash flow. And if you don't have cash, I don't care how well your plane is engineered, if you don't have gasoline, it's going to crash. So if you can manage all 6 of those things and know how to manage them, and hopefully have frameworks within each to manage those, then you know how to fly an airplane, you know how to run a business. And just like an airplane, if you don't run it well, it'll crash. If you and I went to the airport tomorrow to fly to Hawaii or whatever, and the airplane that we're walking up to has a giant body. It's just a massive belly of a body, Lou.
Yeah.
And it had tiny little wings, little bitty propellers that were fueled by rubber bands, and gasoline was flowing out the back of it. You would intuitively know not to get on that airplane. Something in you would say, this won't fly. And what the problem is, a lot of us, we come out of college and we look at a business and we can't tell whether it'll fly or not. It's really obvious whether it will fly. It's really obvious. It's just that people aren't learning whether it's obvious. They don't know the obvious things. So if I walk into a business, I want to know, do you have a clear message? Do people understand? Do you own a problem? Does this business own a problem that the public has? And if you don't own that problem, and if you're not known for that problem, I'd say you got a really bad right engine. If you got a really beautiful office and you've got great branding and there are expensive people, labor walking around, you got a big old belly of an airplane, which is fine as long as you have really big wings and really powerful engines.
Gotcha. I'm joking about this to the listeners. Anyone living in the Nashville area, look out for low flying planes, because if Donald's helped guide that business, he says he's got to keep that overhead low. So we know that the body's going to be close to the ground. So just be careful out there for those.
Well, actually, it's the opposite. The smaller the body, the higher it can go. It runs like a missile.
Very, very true. Okay. So these processes are simple. They're straightforward. They hit exactly all the pieces that everyone who wants to run a company that's out there. Is there one problem that most of the 6 that you listed, what is the biggest area that people either forget to make it simple or make it complicated that needs the most fixing most often in your experience?
Well, if you were going into a business to turn it around, probably the very first thing you'd be tempted to do is lower overhead. But that's actually not the first thing I would do. The first thing I would do is clarify the company's message. And that is, like I said before, own a problem. And if you don't own a problem yet, there's a massive market opportunity. So in other words, what I'm going to do, the very first thing I do when I walk into a business is I'm going to ramp up the right and left engines. I'm going to start clarifying the message, getting the sales funnel working, getting the sales team really good scripts. And then once we get cash flowing into the business, because that's the heartbeat of the business, and you got to fill up the fuel tank, then I'm going to start cutting overhead. I'm going to find out who's necessary and who's not necessary, because the major place where you cut overhead is your labor. And the other thing is, I'm going to find people who aren't making the company money. And the first thing I'm going to do is not get rid of them. I'm going to try to optimize them. I'm going to say, well, look, let's find some work for this person to do that actually contributes to leads or to sales.
So I love asking this question. We've had some really good storytelling speakers come on this program, thought leaders, authors, just on the top of my head right now, from Kindra Hall, who wrote Stories That Stick. And we've also had Melanie Diesel, who has the content framework that we all need to help build the right messaging. From building a story brand, and I do recognize how important this is, the challenge of trying to say what your business does in a way that really resonates. This is rewinding a little bit back to your other component, because you mentioned this about how important that marketing and that messaging is. The hardest part sometimes is getting the people who are on that plane to speak your language. Do you have some certain tactics, Donald, that you use to help people really understand how the simplification of what the story is really how this is going to sell the company and make it fly higher?
Yeah, I'll give you two. One is really simple, and that is, when you explain what your company does, just follow this formula: problem, product, result. Problem, product, result. So everybody can just write that down. You want to start with what problem you solve, not with your product. You want to start with what problem you solve. Then you want to state your product. Then you want to state the result that happens after people buy your product. So for instance, let's say you're at a cocktail party and you walk up to somebody and you say, what do you do? And they say, well, I'm an at-home chef. And you would probably say, oh, that's interesting. Where'd you study? Where'd you go to culinary school? You ever cooked for anybody famous? Those sorts of things. Because they told you what they did. They told you what their title was. They told you what their product was. But let's say you walked up to somebody and you said, what do you do? And they say, well, you know how most families don't eat together anymore. And when they do, they don't eat healthy. I'm an at-home chef. So I come to your house and cook so your family can eat together and really connect, and you never have to feel guilty about the food you're feeding. Who's going to get more business? Well, the first person told you what they did. The second person used a formula: problem, product, result. So what we've got to do is train every person in our organization that when you say, what does Acme Feed and Seed do? You say, well, you know how most farmers have to go to 20 different stores to get all their farm equipment? We keep it all in-house and at a low price, so you save both time and money running your farm. There it is: problem, product, result. And what that does is it increases the perceived value of your product. We value things, everything in life, we value based on how well it solves a problem. So when you start saying, well, I sell medicine, nobody knows the value of that medicine until you say what problem it solves. I sell medicine that cures brain cancer. Okay, well, that's an extremely valuable medicine. I sell medicine that cures athlete's foot. Okay, well, that's a valuable medicine, not as valuable as brain cancer. But so the more that you can actually state, my medicine solves this problem, the more your medicine is worth. So that's your external messaging. That's the messaging that you want on your website, on your business card, on the mouths of every single employee, in your elevator pitch. You want it in the sales pitch that your salespeople deliver: problem, product, result. That one message, just getting that unified message, that external message that you're saying to the public, aligned inside of a team, can double your revenue. And what's really beautiful, Lou, is they're just words. I mean, how much do words cost? They don't cost anything. But people only buy things when they hear the right words.
It's actually interesting, the right words. You're saying this, and I'm starting to, it's all clicking right now, because from somebody that came from a writing direction initially, putting the words together, you've now dove into an area, and obviously you're finding the right words that make the most sense. And oh, by the way, under problem, product, solving here, you building a story brand. Business made simple. When it came to coming up with these titles, it seems like you drank your own medicine. Was it hard looking onto yourself and the messages that you were coming up? Because sometimes that could happen. Did you deploy the same methodology for the way you came up with your messaging?
We did. Yeah. We are constantly asking, what problem do we solve? So Business Made Simple as a company solves the problem of complexity in business. So we don't believe that it should be a mystery to run a business. We don't believe that it should be a puzzle. We believe it should be obvious, and the moves should be obvious. So Business Made Simple became the medicine that solves the problem of business complexity, or really just the information food fight that exists that people have to go through in order to run a business. We just think it should be simple, because it really is simple. Most things are simple. If you hand a really brilliant person a machine that has 12 parts, they'll hand that machine back to you with 6 parts and it'll run more efficiently. If you hand somebody who is not creative and is not intelligent a machine with 12 parts, they'll hand it back to you with 27 parts and it'll work less efficiently. And you know what I'm talking about, Lou.
It's so true.
So, the whole idea is, what's the fastest point between, or fastest route between 2 points? It's going to be a straight line. So you're always trying to find what's the straight line to do things as efficiently as possible.
Donald, that you just brought back. I recently saw a movie, what's it called? Doc Hollywood, and he keeps wrecking this really sports car. And every time he returns the car fixed, he hands him a box with like extra pieces. He goes, yeah, every time I put it back together, there's always extra pieces there.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty good. Donald, you've been thriving as a writer. You've been thriving and helping to get businesses rolling. You were thriving as an entrepreneur, which is awesome. And this is why you're on Thrive Loud, because this is what you do each and every day. Yet we all have days when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders, and the words aren't quite flowing. The problems aren't solving themselves. And in some ways of saying this, we're just not having a good day.
Yeah.
Donald, when you're off your game, what practice do you seek, or what individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
Yeah, Lou, that is, if you answer those questions on your podcast, you will have one of the most valuable podcasts out there. I'll tell you that right now. You really do. Because, but there are 2 things really. I'll tell you, don't let me forget, but I'll tell you the specific thing that I do here in a minute. But I'll also say this: the times that are hard, the times when revenue's not there, the times when you're not in the mood, those are actually the biggest blessings, because it's almost only in times when we're experiencing a challenge that we invent the thing that helps us overcome the challenge. So, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, hard times are the precursor to creativity. Mm-hmm. So I really love those times, those seasons where, revenue's down a little bit, or the leads aren't coming in, or whatever, because you pace the floor at 4 a.m. and you figure out, what do we got to do to fix this? And you never would have come up with that brilliant idea unless you were suffering. So let's not just always curse the times that are hard. I will say this though: the thing that I make a routine habit when things get tough is 7 a.m. I'm sitting in a chair and I'm working. So from 7 to about 10 a.m. Those are the golden hours for me. Now I work till 5, but I don't have any meetings from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Those are the times when I'm sitting either working on a book or creating a piece of content. Now that happens to be me, even though I'm the CEO of the company, I'm the chief content creator. But for you, it may be sales calls. For you, it may be something else.
I don't care about me. I want to know what you do. I want your formula. Our listeners want to understand. Donald Miller's killing it. He's crushing it. He's made business simple. What's his magic practice? So this morning time is your special time to get yourself all together?
Yeah. If you know what your priorities are, you need to pick at least 3 hours a day, 5 days a week to get them done.
I like it. Simple and right on point. And on brand, for that matter. Let's do this, Donald. Let's do the admin part of the show before we go down Fun Street. Share with the listeners all the places people can find you, Business Made Simple, any other things you got going on, social media handles. We will put it on the show notes, but it always gets way more engagement when they hear it directly from you.
Well, there's just one, and that is, I love doing a thing that to me, it's the most fun I can have, and that's reviewing people's websites. So literally, somebody sends me a domain name, and I turn on a video camera and I just look at their website and I critique it. And I say, look, your tagline should probably be this. Your direct call to action should probably be here. And then there's a woman on my staff named Emily, who's incredibly talented. She listens to me do this, and then she recreates a PDF that looks like a website of your new website. And literally I put it up on YouTube on Wednesdays. It's called Website Wednesday. And if you want me to do your website, all you have to do is go to businessmadesimple.com/website. So just go to businessmadesimple.com/website. It's completely free. You enter your domain name, and I do this 52 times a year. And I'm thinking about doing it 260 times, like 5 days a week, because it's literally so fun. But you actually got a great shot at being chosen because I do 52 of them. So businessmadesimple.com/website, and there's a chance I'll review your website. If we do, I'll send you a box of popcorn so you can eat popcorn while I review your website, and you'll love it.
That's one of my favorite. That's one of Donald. That's one of my favorite plugs ever. That's one of my favorite plugs ever. We not only would do this for you, we're going to give you popcorn. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. If your website's really bad, we're going to send you popcorn and a bottle of whiskey.
Right. I was going to something a little bit stronger than some pop kernels. Permission, my friend, to go down Fun Street with me here, Donald.
Please, yeah, let's go.
All right. So I gave you the heads up at the top of the show. First, start off. Do you have a movie that's one of your all-time favorites?
I have many movies that are my all-time favorites. I would say in terms of just personal enjoyment, because it often feels like a little bit of a story of my life a little bit. There's a movie called Wonder Boys about a professor who's trying to write a book, and he teaches a literature class. That's my background, writing books and teaching literature. So I love that movie. In terms of story structure, Toy Story 3 is the best story told on film in terms of obeying structure and getting all the plot points right. And then It's a Wonderful Life is my all-time favorite movie.
So one of my favorites in there too. You just mentioned that with Toy Story 3.
Brilliant.
I don't believe I've ever seen more people tearful coming out of a movie.
It got me too.
And especially if you're a parent. I actually remembered had a conversation with my kids who didn't feel as connected with it at the time that it came out. They were younger at that time. And I remembered coming back and going like, wow, I go, it's unbelievable. It was the first two movies were unbelievable with the record breaking thing they did. And then the way that story comes to an end is great. So, I like the fact that someone who is about building brands and stories appreciates the structure of that, because it really does do well. Okay, amazing. Donald, we're going to go do the Fun Street speed round here. Here's how it works. I know you're all nervous about this. I know you've been sweating it since the top of the show. I'm going to ask you a question. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that usually lift you up, motivate you, make you thrive. Ready to rock and roll?
Ready. Okay.
Favorite song that you love to hear, or one that pumps you up?
Ooh, favorite song. I should have a quicker answer to that. Right now, I'm going to say anything from Nathaniel Rateliff.
Favorite food that is not a dessert?
Anything Mexican, specifically beef enchiladas.
A favorite dessert?
All of them, specifically cookies and cream ice cream.
An activity you wish you did more of?
Oh man, I wish I got married and now we're expecting a child, and so I'm not going to do it. But I wish I could spend more time on my motorcycle. Okay. But we're limiting that these days, Lou.
An activity you wish you did less of?
Eating desserts.
Specifically cookies and cream.
Yeah.
Donald, if I snap my fingers and you can go anywhere in the world, where are you?
Oh, I'm probably in the south of France. Yeah, probably on a warm beach somewhere in a European country.
To someone who appreciates simplicity, brand, and messaging, I'm curious as we wrap up this episode here with Donald Miller. Donald Miller, is there a brand or a slogan or some way that a company messages itself that is one of your favorites, the one you look to and say, man, they nailed that?
Yeah, there's an entire business strategy and a lot of sort of sub messages inside. They've used StoryBrand to do it, but there's a used car franchise called CarMax, and CarMax has created, I think, the best example of what we're talking about when we talk about clarifying your message in the StoryBrand framework.
Donald Miller, Business Made Simple. Thanks for making this episode simple here on Thrive Loud.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.